Okay, my outstanding friends, we're just going to continue on. We're still on chapter 2, about halfway through, and we're in the Venus section, and we are going through some cataclysmic events, and it's tied to the Exodus. I'm going to go back in and let Velikovsky continue on, and it's stunning, it's shocking, it's disturbing. Okay, here it goes.
By the comet of the time of the Exodus. He utilized its gifts, and today his highways are crowded with vehicles used for domestic purposes. Then many ages passed when it was out of use. Only in the middle of the last century did man begin to exploit this oil, partly contributed by the comet of the time of the Exodus. He utilized its gifts, and today his highways are crowded with vehicles propelled by oil. Into the heights rose man, and he accomplished the age-old dream of flying like a bird. For this too he uses the remnants of the intruding star that poured fire and sticky vapor upon his ancestors.
He's actually using the body fluids from the giants.
The darkness. The Earth entered deeper into the tail of the onrushing comet and approached its body. This approach, if one is to believe the sources, was followed by a disturbance in the rotation of the Earth. Terrific hurricanes swept the Earth because of the change or reversal of the angular velocity of rotation and because of the sweeping gases, dust, and cinders of the comet. Numerous rabbinical sources describe the calamity of darkness. The material is collated as follows. An exceedingly strong wind endured 7 days. All the time the land was shrouded in darkness. On the 4th, 5th, and 6th days the darkness was so dense that they, the people of Egypt, could not stir from their place. The darkness was of such a nature that it could not be dispelled by artificial means. The light of the fire was either extinguished by the violence of storm, or else it was made invisible and swallowed up in the density of the darkness. Nothing could be discerned. None was able to speak or to hear, nor could anyone venture to take food, but they lay themselves down, their outward senses in a trance. Thus they remained, overwhelmed by the affliction. The darkness was of such kind that their eyes were blinded by it and their breath choked. It was naught of ordinary earthy kind. The rabbinical tradition, contradicting the spirit of the scriptural narrative, states that during the plague of darkness the vast majority of the Israelites perished, and that only a small fraction of the original Israelite population of Egypt was spared to leave Egypt. 49 out of every 50 Israelites are said to have perished in this plague. A shrine of black granite found at El Arish on the border of Egypt and Palestine bears a long inscription in hieroglyphics. It reads, "The land was in great affliction. Evil fell on this earth. There was a great upheaval in the residence. Nobody could leave the palace. There was no exit from the palace during 9 days. And during these 9 days of upheaval there was such a tempest that neither men nor gods, the royal family, could see the faces of those beside them." This record employs the same description of the darkness as Exodus chapter 10, verse 22. "And there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days."
This is, he went and did all the research and matched all these different accounts from everywhere in the world. It's not just one, and it goes over and over and over and over. Velikovsky was the best researcher that ever lived, as far as I'm concerned.
The difference in the number of the days, 3 and 9, of the darkness is reduced in the rabbinical sources, where the time is given as 7 days. The difference between 7 and 9 days is negligible if one considers the subjectivity of the time estimation under such conditions. Appraisal of the darkness with respect to its impenetrability is also subjective. Rabbinical sources say that for part of the time there was a very slight visibility, but for the rest, 3 days, there was no visibility at all. It should be kept in mind that, as in the case I have already discussed, a day and a night of darkness or light can be described as 1 day or as 2 days. That both sources, the Hebrew and the Egyptian, refer to the same event can be established by another means also. Following the prolonged darkness and the hurricane, the pharaoh, according to the hieroglyphic text of the shrine, pursued the evildoers to the place called pt2. The same place is mentioned in Exodus chapter 14, verse 9. But the Egyptian pursued after them all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, and overtook them encamping by the sea beside pi-hahiroth. The inscription on the shrine also narrates the death of the pharaoh during this pursuit under exceptional circumstances. Now, when the majesty fought with the evildoers in this pool, the place of the whirlpool, the evildoers prevailed not over his majesty. His majesty leapt into the place of the whirlpool. This is the same apotheosis described in Exodus chapter 15, verse 19. For the horse of Pharaoh went in with his chariots and with his horsemen into the sea, and the Lord brought again the waters of the sea upon them. If the Egyptian darkness was caused by the Earth's stasis or tilting of its axis, and was aggravated by a thin cinder dust from the comet, then the entire globe must have suffered from the effect of these two concurring phenomena. In either the eastern or the western parts of the world, there must have been a very extended, gloomy day. Nations and tribes in many places of the globe, to the south, to the north, and to the west of Egypt, have old traditions about a cosmic catastrophe during which the sun did not shine. But in some parts of the world, the traditions maintain that the sun did not set for a period of time equal to a few days. Tribes of the Sudan to the south of Egypt refer in their tales to a time when the night would not come to an end. Kalevala, the epos of the Finns, tells of a time when hailstones of iron fell from the sky, and the sun and the moon disappeared, were stolen from the sky, and did not appear again. In their stead, after a period of darkness, a new sun and a new moon were placed in the sky. Gaius Julius Solinus writes that, following the deluge which is reported to have occurred in the days of Ogigis, a heavy night spread over the globe. In the manuscripts of Avila and Molina, who collected the traditions of the Indians of the New World, it is related that the sun did not appear for 5 days. A cosmic collision of stars preceded the cataclysm. People and animals tried to escape to mountain caves. Scarcely had they reached there when the sea, breaking out of bounds following a terrifying shock, began to rise on the Pacific coast. But as the sea rose, filling the valleys and the plains around, the mountain of Ankasmarka rose too, like a ship on the waves. During the 5 days that this cataclysm lasted, the sun did not show its face, and the earth remained in darkness.
Wow. That's the first time I've heard about the whole Earth's surface rising with the waters coming in, because it was a global flood at this time. You know, they recorded it that the waters came in, and even the surface of the Earth rose. Now, that's where they had the red bed, the gray clay, and the black cap. This all happened, and of course the burning and all that stuff was the black cap, and the red bed was the boiling hot, fleshy stuff that boils off of bloody creatures. And it settled, and then the gray clay is the leftovers, and that pedal on top, the floating stuff, and then the black cap came on top. And that's what I have here. I'm in the Triassic zone. This is amazing. Let me back that up 20 seconds. Here goes.
Pacific coast. But as the sea rose, filling the valleys and the plains around, the mountain of Ankasmarka rose too, like a ship on the waves. During the 5 days that this cataclysm lasted, the sun did not show its face, and the earth remained in darkness. Thus, the traditions of the Peruvians describe a time when the sun did not appear for 5 days. In the upheaval, the earth changed its profile, and the sea fell upon the land.
How could anybody miss this? It's just everywhere. And they made him take the book off the bookshelves after being #1 for 11 weeks in a row.
Describe a time when the sun did not appear for 5 days. In the upheaval, the earth changed its profile, and the sea fell upon the land. East of Egypt, in Babylonia, the 11th tablet of the Epic of Gilgamesh refers to the same events. From out the horizon rose a dark cloud, and it rushed against the earth. The land was shriveled by the heat of the flames. Desolation stretched to heaven. All that was bright was turned into darkness, nor could a brother distinguish his brother. 6 days the hurricane, deluge, and tempest continued sweeping the land, and all human back to its clay was returned. The Iranian book,
Wow! And all humans back to its clay was returned. That's the mud. That's the mud fossils. That's the the red bed. Let's back that up and listen to that again. This is stunning stuff. Here goes again.
To heaven. All that was bright was turned into darkness, nor could a brother distinguish his brother. 6 days the hurricane, deluge, and tempest continued sweeping the land, and all human back to its clay was
all human back to its clay
returned. The Iranian book Anugita reveals that a threefold day and threefold night concluded a world age, and the book Bundahis, in a context that I shall quote later, and that shows a close relation to the events of the cataclysm I describe here, tells of the world being dark at midday as though it were in deepest night. It was caused, according to the Bundahis, by a war between the stars and the planets. A protracted night, deepened by the onrushing dust sweeping in from interplanetary space, enveloped Europe, Africa, and America, the valleys of the Euphrates and the Indus also. If the Earth did not stop rotating, but slowed down or was tilted, there must have been a longitude where a prolonged day was followed by a prolonged night. Iran is so situated that, if one is to believe the Iranian tradition, the sun was absent for a threefold day, and then it shone for a threefold day. Farther to the east, there must have been a protracted day corresponding to the protracted night in the west. According to Bahman Yast, at the end of a world age in eastern Iran or in India, the sun remained 10 days visible in the sky.
Let me just mention something, and I think he does mention it, but this is because the earth was twisted. So it's spinning like this, and when you're way up here, you're going to have darkness for a lot longer. Hopefully he explains it, because I have a hard time explaining that one. But it's on its twisted on its axis. So this one here, forget about it. All right, let's get back to sanity. Here we go.
In China, during the reign of the Emperor Yahoo, a great catastrophe brought a world age to a close. For 10 days, the sun did not set. The events of the time of the Emperor Yahoo deserve close examination. I shall return to the subject shortly. Earthquake. The Earth, forced out of its regular motion, reacted to the close approach of the body of the comet. A major shock convulsed the lithosphere, and the area of the earthquake was the entire globe. Ipuwer witnessed and survived this earthquake. The towns are destroyed. Upper Egypt has become waste. All is ruin. The residence is overturned in a minute. Only an earthquake could have overturned the residence in a minute. The Egyptian word for to overturn is used in the sense of to overthrow a wall. This was the 10th plague. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. Exodus chapter 12, verse 30. Houses fell, smitten by one violent blow. The angel of the Lord passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. Exodus chapter 12, verse 27. Nogath, meaning smote, is the word used for a very violent blow, as for instance, goring by the horns of an ox. The Passover Haggadah says, "The firstborn of the Egyptians didst thou crush at midnight." The reasons why the Israelites were more fortunate in this plague than the Egyptians probably lies in the kind of material of which their dwellings were constructed. Occupying a marshy district and working on clay, the captives must have lived in huts made of clay and reeds, which are more resilient than brick or stone. The Lord will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come and smite your houses. An example of the selective action of a natural agent upon various kinds of construction is narrated also in Mexican annals. During a catastrophe accompanied by hurricane and earthquake, only the people who lived in small log cabins remained uninjured. The larger buildings were swept away. They found that those who lived in small houses had escaped, as well as the newly married couples, whose custom it was to live for a few years in cabins in front of those of their fathers-in-law. In Ages in Chaos, my reconstruction of ancient history, I shall show that firstborn, Bechor, in the text of the plague, is a corruption of chosen, Bechor. All the flower of Egypt succumbed in the catastrophe. Forsooth, the children of princes are dashed against the walls. The children of princes are cast out in the streets. The prison is ruined, wrote Ipuwer, and this reminds us of princes in palaces and captives in dungeons who were victims in the disaster. Exodus chapter 12, verse 29. To confirm my interpretation of the 10th plague as an earthquake, which should be obvious from the expression to smite the houses, I find a corroborating passage of Artapanus in which he describes the last night before the Exodus, and which is quoted by Eusebius. There was hail and earthquake by night, so that those who fled from the earthquake were killed by the hail, and those who sought shelter from the hail were destroyed by the earthquake. And at that time all the houses fell in, and most of the temples. Also, Hieronymus, St. Jerome, wrote in an epistle that, in the night in which Exodus took place, all the temples of Egypt were destroyed, either by an earth shock or by the thunderbolt. Similarly, in the Midrashim, the 7th plague, the plague of Barad, meteorites, earthquake, fire, meteorites. It is also said that the structures which were erected by the Israelite slaves in Pithom and Ramses collapsed or were swallowed by the earth. An inscription which dates from the beginning of the New Kingdom refers to a temple of the Middle Kingdom that was swallowed by the ground at the close of the Middle Kingdom. The head of the celestial body approached very close, breaking through the darkness of the gaseous envelope, and according to the Midrashim, the last night in Egypt was as bright as the noon on the day of the summer solstice. The population fled. Men flee. Tents are what they make, like the dwellers of hills, wrote Ipuwer. The population of a city destroyed by an earthquake usually spends the nights in the fields. The book of Exodus describes a hurried flight from Egypt on the night of the 10th plague. A mixed multitude of non-Israelites left Egypt together with the Israelites, who spent their first night in Sukkot, huts. The lightnings lightened the world. The earth trembled and shook. Thou leddest thy people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. They were brought out of Egypt by a portent which looked like a stretched arm, by a stretched out arm, and by great terrors, or with a mighty hand, and with an outstretched arm, and with great terribleness, and with signs, and with wonders. 13.
Some of this stuff, I mean, how do you can't really figure it out. And it's mystical because it's kind of magical stuff, really, basically. And I see all the evidence to support this stuff, what they're saying. Velikovsky did the deep research. It wasn't just one place or the other. It was the whole world. Some of these accounts may not be exactly correct, but there's too much that are all similar. But obviously one here or there is not going to be exactly perfect. It might be a little embellished or a little whatever. But there's just too much that fits together to dismiss. There's no way you can dismiss this.